$10 million, one fatal flaw. Who's brave enough? The Billionaire's challenge echoed through Manhattan's most exclusive dining room, met only by expensive silence. Until a waitress in a stained apron did something impossible. She spoke. One sentence, one devastating truth. And suddenly, the invisible woman holding a coffee pot became the only person in the room worth looking at. But here's what nobody knew. The shy server hiding behind that quiet voice, she wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Her old life had been destroyed. Her reputation burned to ash. And the man offering $10 million was about to make it so much worse. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The thing about being invisible is that you get really good at reading rooms. Eliza Bennett had perfected the art over 3 years of carrying plates through New York's wealthiest dining spaces. She knew which tables wanted warm smiles, which wanted efficient silence, and which, like Table 7 tonight, wanted her to be furniture. Expensive, well-trained furniture that knew when to refill wine and when to disappear. She preferred disappearing. More bread for the table, please. The request came from a woman whose diamond bracelet probably cost more than Eliza's annual rent. The woman didn't look at her. They never did. Right away, ma'am. Eliza moved through Aurelio's main dining room like water, smooth, unremarkable, leaving no trace. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a building that housed more money per square foot than most small countries. Crystal chandeliers threw soft light across white tablecloths. The kitchen produced food that people photographed before eating. And the clientele? They came here to be seen by each other while ignoring everyone else. Perfect for someone who needed to stay hidden. She was halfway to the kitchen when she heard it. Not the words themselves, those came later, but the shift in the room's energy. That particular change in air pressure that meant something interesting was happening at Table 7. Eliza had learned not to be curious. Curiosity created eye contact, and eye contact created recognition, and recognition was dangerous. But her feet slowed anyway, some old instinct surfacing despite 3 years of practiced numbness. The voice that had changed the room belonged to a man she'd been carefully not noticing all evening. Landon Pierce. She knew the name because everyone knew the name. Billionaire, tech acquisitions. That thing where obscenely rich people bought companies the way normal humans bought coffee. Also, single father, if the tabloids were accurate. Though the elegant blonde draped on his arm tonight suggested his single status might be negotiable. I'm serious. His voice carried that particular timbre of someone used to being heard. Not loud. He didn't need loud. $10 million. Cash. Tonight. To anyone in this room who can identify the fatal flaw in the model. Eliza's hands tightened on her empty serving tray. Don't listen, don't engage. Don't... But her brain had already clicked into gear. That old machinery sparking to life before she could stop it. Her eyes found the presentation tablet being passed around Table 7. Financial models, acquisition structures, the kind of corporate architecture she used to build before everything fell apart. Used to build. Past tense. Dead and buried. She forced herself to keep walking. Come on, Landon. That was Marcus Webb, a hedge fund manager whose face regularly appeared in the Financial Times. You're not seriously offering... I'm completely serious. Landon's voice held amusement and something sharper. Challenge, maybe. Or boredom with people who didn't challenge him. The model's flawed. Critically. My team missed it, which means I'm either about to lose a fortune or they're not as smart as I'm paying them to be. Either way, $10 million to whoever spots it first. The blonde woman, his date, fiancé, whatever, laughed. It sounded like expensive wind chimes. Darling, you can't just throw money at random people. Watch me, Victoria. Eliza reached the kitchen doors. Safety was 10 feet away. She could push through, grab bread, return to being invisible. She should push through. She absolutely should. The tablet passed to Caroline Ashford, a venture capitalist who'd been on the cover of Forbes last month. Eliza had seen her type before. Smart, ruthless. Dressed like she'd won at capitalism and wanted everyone to know it. Caroline studied the screen for maybe 30 seconds. The revenue projections are aggressive, but not impossible. I don't see... Keep looking. The tablet moved again. More executives, more analysis, more expensive people proving they were worth their expensive educations and expensive suits. None of them saw it. But Eliza did. She saw it the moment the screen angled toward her section of the room, just for a second, just enough. The flaw wasn't in the revenue projections or the market analysis or any of the obvious places. It was in the debt structure, specifically in how the acquisition model treated legacy liabilities from a subsidiary 3 layers deep in the target company's corporate structure. Someone had assumed those liabilities would transfer at book value during the acquisition. A reasonable assumption. Also completely wrong for this specific type of regulatory environment. The error would trigger a revaluation clause, which would trigger penalty provisions, which would cascade through the entire deal structure like financial dominoes, turning a profitable acquisition into a catastrophic loss. $10 million loss? Try $100 million. Maybe more. Eliza's heart hammered against her ribs. Her palms went slick around the serving tray. Every instinct she'd developed over 3 years of hiding screamed at her to walk away, keep her mouth shut, stay invisible. But there was another instinct. Older. Deeper. The part of her that used to solve problems like this before breakfast, that used to walk into boardrooms and make powerful people realize they were wrong. The part of her that got her destroyed. She made it to the kitchen doors, pushed through. The familiar chaos of Aurelio's kitchen enveloped her. Heat, noise, the controlled frenzy of a Friday night service. "Eliza, bread for 7." Chef Marcus didn't look up from his station. She grabbed the basket. Warm focaccia, rosemary, and sea salt, the smell usually comforting. Tonight it just made her nauseous. Go back, serve the bread, stay invisible. That was the smart play. The safe play. The play that kept her employed, housed, and away from anyone who might recognize her face and remember the scandal. Remember the headlines. Remember how spectacularly Eliza Bennett had fallen. She pushed back through the kitchen doors. Table 7 was still dissecting the model. A new voice had joined, someone from Landon's own team, apparently trying to defend the numbers. Failing, by the sound of it. "The structure is sound," the man was saying. Dark suit, nervous energy. "We ran it past 3 different advisory firms. Then you paid 3 firms to miss the same critical error." Landon's voice held no anger, just flat certainty. "Which means I'm about to pay someone else $10 million to find it." Eliza approached the table, set down the bread basket. Her hands barely shook. "Leave. Now. You did your job." But her mouth opened anyway. "It's the legacy liabilities." The words came out quieter than she'd intended. For a moment she thought maybe nobody had heard, that she could still retreat into invisibility, that this moment of insanity could be undone. Then everyone at table 7 went silent. 8 faces turned toward her. 8 sets of eyes that had looked through her all night, suddenly seeing her for the first time. Landon Pierce's gaze hit her like a physical thing, sharp, assessing, uncomfortably direct. "Excuse me?" His voice wasn't hostile, just genuinely curious, like she'd started speaking Latin and he wanted to understand. Eliza's throat tried to close. Her brain fired warning signals like a building alarm. This was it, the moment she could still back away, apologize, say she'd misunderstood, retreat to the kitchen, and maybe keep her job if she was lucky. Instead, she heard herself continue. The subsidiary liabilities. 3 layers down in the target company's structure. Her voice steadied as the technical language came back. Muscle memory from another life. The model assumes they transfer at book value during acquisition. But given the regulatory environment, specifically the changes to Section 382 limitation rules from last year, they'll trigger a revaluation. That triggers the penalty provisions in the senior debt covenants, which cascade through the entire deal structure. Silence. Then Victoria, the blonde fiancée, laughed. Actually laughed, high and sharp. "Oh, this is precious. Landon, your waitress is giving you financial advice." "My waitress," Landon said slowly, still watching Eliza, "just identified the exact problem my 30-person advisory team missed." He reached for the tablet, pulled up something, screens changing rapidly as he navigated through the model. His expression shifted, just slightly, just enough. "Jesus Christ." He looked up at his nervous executive. "David, tell me she's wrong." David, the dark suit, had gone pale. We didn't. The 382 modifications were supposed to be revenue neutral. They're revenue neutral for operating companies. not for acquisitions involving legacy subsidiary debt. Eliza was fully committed now, the analysis spooling out like she was back in her old office, back when she had offices and credibility and a future. The revaluation will push the debt-to-equity ratio past the covenant threshold. That triggers the penalty rate, which makes the acquisition unprofitable at current terms. Landon stared at her, then at the tablet, then at David, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him. How unprofitable? Eliza didn't need to check the numbers. She'd already done the mental math. At current interest rates, and assuming standard penalty provisions, you'd lose approximately $120 million in the first year alone. More silence. This one felt different, heavier. Victoria's smile had frozen on her face. Marcus Webb had leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed. Caroline Ashford was looking at Eliza like she'd just materialized out of thin air. "Who are you?" Caroline asked. Not unkindly, just genuinely bewildered. That was the question, wasn't it? 3 years ago, Eliza could have answered with her credentials. MIT, top of her class. Consulting firm partner before she turned 28. The young woman who'd built predictive models so elegant they'd been featured in Harvard Business Review. Now? Now she was the woman in the stained apron who smelled like coffee and kept her head down. She started. "She's right." Landon cut her off, still staring at the tablet. Completely, devastatingly right. "David, how did we miss this?" David had no answer. Neither did the rest of Table 7. They just stared at Eliza like she'd performed a magic trick. Or a con. She couldn't tell which. Landon set down the tablet, reached into his jacket, pulled out a checkbook. An actual physical checkbook, because apparently billionaires still use those. "What's your name?" Eliza's heart stopped. This was where it ended. The moment someone asked for her name, started asking questions, maybe pulled out a phone to search for her face, the moment the past caught up. "Eliza," she managed. First name only. Safe. Generic. "Eliza." He was writing. Actually writing a check. "You just saved me $120 million. I'd say that earns $10 million. How do you want this made out?" The room spun. $10 million. He was serious. He was actually, I can't. The words came out strangled. "I'm working. I need to." "You need to sit down." It wasn't a command exactly, but it wasn't a suggestion either. Landon gestured to an empty chair at the table. "Please." Victoria's hand landed on his arm. "Landon, this is absurd." She's a waitress. She probably heard someone else. She just recited the specific Section 382 modifications from last year's tax code changes and calculated their impact on a complex acquisition structure in her head. Landon didn't look away from Eliza. "She's not just a waitress." No, she wasn't, and that was the problem. Eliza felt her carefully constructed walls cracking. 3 years of hiding, of staying small, of being forgettable. 3 years of convincing herself that invisible was safe, that anonymous was survivable, all of it shattering because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. "I can't accept your money." She took a step back, the table, the people, the attention, all of it suddenly suffocating. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything. Excuse me." She turned to go. "Wait." Something in Landon's voice stopped her. Not authority. She'd learned to ignore authority. Something else. Genuine curiosity. Maybe even respect. She looked back. He'd stood up. Tall, well-built, the kind of attractive that probably came with personal trainers and tailors who knew your measurements by heart. But it was his eyes that held her. Sharp, yes. Assessing, absolutely. But not cruel, not dismissive. "You just demonstrated expertise that most people spend decades acquiring," he said, "in the time it takes to serve bread. And now you're refusing $10 million. So either you're the most principled waitress in Manhattan, or there's a story here." Both, Eliza thought. Neither. "I don't know anymore. She struggled for words that wouldn't give too much away. "I need this job. And standing here, having this conversation, it's compromising your position," Landon finished. Understanding flickered across his face. "You're worried your manager will think you're overstepping." Sure, that was part of it, a small part. The larger part was that every second she stood here, the risk grew. Someone might recognize her. Someone might pull out their phone. Someone might remember the articles, the scandal, the very public destruction of Eliza Bennett's career and reputation. Something like that, she said. Landon studied her for a long moment. Then he reached into his wallet, pulled out a business card. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. My office. He held out the card. Come talk to me. About a job. A real one. Eliza's hand moved to take the card before her brain could stop it. Heavy stock, simple design, Landon Pierce, CEO, Pierce Acquisitions Group. An address in Midtown. You clearly have skills that are being wasted, he paused, unless you genuinely love waitressing, in which case I apologize for the presumption. Did she love it? God, no. But it was safe. It was anonymous. It was a life where nobody asked questions about her past because nobody cared enough to ask. Think about it, Landon said. 2 p.m. Even if you just want to tell me no in person. He sat back down. Conversation at the table slowly resumed, though most eyes stayed on Eliza. Victoria's gaze could have cut glass. Eliza fled. Back through the kitchen, past Chef Marcus's questioning look, into the small server station that smelled like coffee grounds and anxiety. She leaned against the wall, business card still clutched in her hand, heart trying to jackhammer through her ribs. What the hell had she just done? You okay? Melissa, another server, poked her head in. You look like you saw a ghost. Close enough, Eliza thought. I just ran into my own past. Fine, she managed. Just needed a minute. Melissa disappeared. Eliza looked down at the business card. Simple, professional. An invitation back into the world she'd been running from for 3 years. A world that had destroyed her once already. She should throw it away. Should finish her shift, go home to her studio apartment in Queens and pretend this night never happened. Should stay invisible. But her fingers wouldn't let go of the card. Mont. The rest of the night passed in a blur. Eliza moved through her tables on autopilot, smiling when required, refilling drinks, clearing plates. All the while, her mind kept circling back to table 7, to Landon Pierce's expression when she'd explained the liability structure, to the $10 million she'd refused, to the business card burning a hole in her apron pocket. By closing time, her feet ached and her head throbbed, and she wanted nothing more than to collapse into bed and forget this shift had ever happened. Instead, she changed out of her uniform in the staff room, pulled on jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, and stepped out into the November night. Manhattan at midnight was a different animal than Manhattan at dinner service. Still expensive, still exclusive, but with sharper edges. The kind of place where invisible people like Eliza could blend into shadows and make it home without incident. Usually. Tonight, a town car idled at the curb outside Aurelio's. As Eliza emerged, the back door opened. Get in, Victoria said. Not an invitation, a command. Eliza's stomach dropped. I'm just heading home. I said get in. Victoria's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. 5 minutes. Unless you want me to make a scene out here where your boss can see. Eliza glanced back at the restaurant. Through the windows, she could see Chef Marcus and the night manager closing up. If Victoria started something, if there was drama, questions. She got in the car. Victoria sat across from her in the spacious back seat, legs crossed, every inch the woman who belonged in vehicles that cost more than homes. She was beautiful in that specific way wealthy people achieved, not natural, but expensive, maintained. You're wondering why I wanted to talk, Victoria said. Eliza said nothing. Smart. Stay quiet. That's a good survival instinct. Victoria pulled out her phone, started scrolling. Eliza Bennett, age 30, grew up in Connecticut, scholarship to MIT, fast-tracked through one of the top consulting firms in the country. Made partner before you were 30. Very impressive. Ice flooded Eliza's veins. Then it all fell apart, didn't it? Victoria's voice was conversational. Pleasant, even. The kind of pleasant that preceded knives. Your firm. Your fiancé. That spectacular fraud scandal that made national news. What was it, 40 million in client funds? 50? I was cleared. Eliza's voice came out steadier than she felt. The investigation found no evidence you knew what your fiancé was doing. Yes, I read the reports. Victoria looked up from her phone. But being legally innocent and being professionally dead are different things, aren't they? Nobody wanted to hire the woman whose face was plastered across the Wall Street Journal next to headlines about fraud, even if you didn't know, even if you were a victim too. Every word landed like a punch. Not because they were cruel, they were just true. Painfully, devastatingly true. "What do you want?" Eliza asked. "I want you to stay away from Landon." There it was. "I don't?" "He's fascinated by you now. Mystery woman with secret genius hiding in plain sight. Very compelling narrative." Victoria's smile never wavered. But fascination fades. And when it does, all that's left is the scandal, the headlines, the woman who brought fraud into her own company, even if she didn't mean to. "I didn't bring anything." "Doesn't matter. Perception is reality, Eliza. You should know that by now." Victoria leaned forward. "Landon has a daughter, 6 years old. Do you know what the tabloids would do if they found out her father was associating with someone from your past? The optics alone, I'm not associating with anyone." Anger cut through Eliza's fear. "I served him dinner. That's it. And refused $10 million and got invited to his office tomorrow." Victoria's eyes glittered. "Don't think I didn't notice. Don't think I won't be watching." She pulled out an envelope, set it on the seat between them. $50,000. Cash. "Take it. Don't show up tomorrow. Stay in your little invisible life where you're safe, and I'm not worried about you causing problems." Eliza stared at the envelope. $50,000. 6 months of rent. Breathing room. Safety. The price of staying hidden. "And if I don't?" she heard herself ask. Victoria's smile went arctic. "Then I make sure everyone knows exactly who you are. Your boss, your coworkers, every restaurant in this city. I'll have your face on every industry blacklist by Monday. You'll be lucky to get hired at a chain diner in Jersey." She could do it. Eliza knew women like Victoria. They had resources, connections, the kind of power that came from being engaged to billionaires and knowing how to weaponize it. "Take the money," Victoria said. "Forget about tomorrow. Forget about Landon. Go back to being nobody." The car door opened. A driver stood waiting. Eliza looked at the envelope, at Victoria's smile, at the easy exit being offered. She thought about Landon's expression when she'd explained the liability structure, that moment of genuine interest, respect even. The first time in 3 years someone had looked at her and seen capability instead of just furniture. She left the envelope on the seat. "I'm not interested in your fiancé," Eliza said carefully. "But I'm not interested in your money either." Victoria's smile froze. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe." Eliza climbed out of the car. "But it's my mistake to make." She walked away before Victoria could respond, before she could change her mind, before fear could override the strange, reckless courage that had apparently survived 3 years of hiding. Behind her, the town car pulled away, taking Victoria and her $50,000 and her threats back into the night. Eliza made it 2 blocks before her hands started shaking. What had she just done? She'd refused money, rejected the safe option, essentially declared war on a woman who had the resources to destroy whatever was left of her life. For what? A business card? A maybe job offer from a man she didn't know? The smart play was to throw away the card. Call in sick tomorrow. Maybe start looking for work in a different city entirely. But her fingers were already pulling out her phone, searching for Pierce Acquisitions Group, reading about Landon's company, the acquisitions, the growth, the reputation for finding value where others saw only risk, finding value in broken things. She thought about Victoria's words, go back to being nobody. 3 years. She'd spent 3 years being nobody, being invisible, being safe. And she was so tired of it. Eliza looked at the business card one more time. 2 p.m. Tomorrow. She had no idea what she'd say. No idea if this was courage or just a different flavor of self-destruction. But she knew one thing, she was going to show up. Even if it was a mistake, even if it destroyed what little safety she'd built, at least it would be her choice. For the first time in 3 years, Eliza Bennett was going to stop being invisible, even if it killed her. Eliza didn't tell anyone about the contract for 2 days. She went to work at Aurelio's on Saturday night, carried trays of food she couldn't afford to eat, smiled politely at customers who didn't see her, and pretended her entire world wasn't sitting in an envelope on her kitchen counter. By Sunday morning, she'd read the contract so many times she'd memorized the page numbers. The money was real, the position was real, the offer was real. What she couldn't figure out was whether she was brave enough to say yes. She was standing in her kitchen, staring at her coffee like it held answers, when her phone rang. Unknown number she almost didn't pick up. "Hello? Eliza Bennett?" A woman's voice, professional, clipped. "Yes?" "This is Caroline Wu, executive assistant to Landon Pierce. Mr. Pierce would like to know if you've made a decision regarding his offer." Eliza's stomach dropped. "I have until Monday." "Yes. He wanted me to remind you that if you'd like to discuss any terms before then, he's available." There was a pause. Then Caroline's voice softened, just slightly. "Between us? He doesn't usually follow up this quickly. He must really want you on the team." The call ended before Eliza could respond. She stood there, phone still pressed to her ear, her heart doing that annoying thing again where it beat too fast. He must really want you on the team. She thought about walking back into that world. The world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals and people who made decisions that shaped entire industries. She thought about Daniel, her ex-fiancé, her former partner, the man who'd smiled at her across conference tables and promised her a future, right up until the moment he'd shoved her in front of a federal investigation and disappeared. He'd taken everything: her career, her reputation, her ability to trust her own judgment. And now Landon Pierce, a man she'd known for less than 72 hours, was offering to give some of it back. Eliza set her phone down and picked up the contract one more time. Then she grabbed a pen. About that. Monday morning, 8:45 a.m., Eliza walked back into Pierce Capital wearing the same blazer and skirt, carrying a signed contract and a knot of anxiety that sat just below her ribs. The receptionist recognized her this time. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Pierce is expecting you. 32nd floor, but this time Caroline will meet you at the elevator." The elevator ride felt different now. Less like falling, more like stepping off a cliff on purpose. When the doors opened, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and perfectly tailored gray suit was waiting. "Eliza, I'm Caroline Wu. We spoke yesterday." "Right, thank you for the call." Caroline's expression didn't shift, but there was something approving in her gaze. "Follow me." They walked through the main office, open floor plan, glass-walled conference rooms. People moving with the kind of focused energy that came from knowing exactly how much their time was worth. A few heads turned as they passed. Curious glances. Whispers. Eliza kept her eyes forward. Caroline stopped outside a corner office with Landon's name on the door. She knocked once, then opened it without waiting for an answer. Landon was on the phone, pacing near the windows again, but he looked up the moment Eliza stepped inside. He said something quick into the phone, "I'll call you back," and hung up. "You signed it," he said. It wasn't a question. Eliza pulled the contract from her bag and set it on his desk. "I signed it." Landon picked it up, scanned the signature page, and smiled. Not the polite professional smile she'd seen in photos. A real one. "Good." He set the contract down and gestured toward the sitting area. "We need to talk about how this is going to work." Eliza sat. Her hands were still shaking, so she folded them in her lap. Landon sat across from her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "First thing you need to know, this company doesn't do safe. We take risks other firms won't touch. Distressed assets, hostile takeovers, companies on the edge of bankruptcy. If it's easy, we're not interested." "I read your portfolio," Eliza said. "You've turned around 4 companies in the last 3 years. 2 of them were considered unsalvageable." "They were. Until they weren't." He paused. "You'll be working directly with me on acquisitions. That means long hours, high pressure, and a lot of people who won't be happy to see you succeed." "Why?" "Because you're walking into a world that didn't want you the first time, and because—" He hesitated. "Because some of the people on my team are going to assume I hired you for the wrong reasons." Eliza's jaw tightened. "You mean they'll think I slept my way into this job?" "Yes." At least he was honest. "Let them think what they want," Eliza said. "I'm not here to make friends." Landon studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because the second thing you need to know is that my second in command, Gavin Cross, is not going to like this." "Why not?" Because Gavin's been with me since the beginning. He's brilliant, ruthless, and loyal, but he's also territorial, and bringing you in at this level without running it through him first is going to bruise his ego. Should I be worried? No. Landon's voice was firm. Gavin works for me. Not the other way around, but I'm telling you now so you're not blindsided. Eliza nodded slowly. Anything else I should know? Landon leaned back, his expression shifting into something harder to read. Victoria doesn't know you're starting today. Eliza's stomach twisted. Your fiancé? Yes. She was at the dinner. She saw what happened. She did. Landon's voice was careful now, and she wasn't happy about it. That was an understatement. Eliza remembered the look Victoria had given her, cold, sharp, like she was cataloging exactly how to destroy someone. Does she know you offered me a job? Not yet. Landon. I'll handle Victoria, he said, and there was an edge to his voice now. You focus on the work. Eliza wanted to argue, wanted to point out that walking into a situation where his fiancé already hated her was a terrible idea, but she'd signed the contract, and she wasn't going to back out now. Caroline gave Eliza the tour. Her office was on the 31st floor, smaller than Landon's, but still absurd by any normal standard. Glass walls, a view of the East River, furniture that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never sat in a chair before. You'll have access to the full research database, legal team, and analytics division, Caroline explained, pulling up files on the desktop computer. Landon wants you to start with the Arcadia Tech acquisition. It's been stalled for 2 weeks because the due diligence keeps turning up red flags. Eliza sat down at the desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. What kind of red flags? Revenue inconsistencies, customer churn that doesn't match their projections. The team thinks it's a bad deal. And Landon? Landon thinks there's something we're missing. Caroline handed her a thick folder. He wants your eyes on it by end of day. Eliza took the folder, her hand steadier now. This she knew how to do. I'll have a preliminary analysis by 5. Caroline's expression shifted, just slightly. Approval, maybe. Or relief. Good. Oh, and one more thing. Yes? There's a staff meeting at 11. Landon wants you there. Eliza's stomach flipped again. All staff? Senior team. About 20 people. Caroline paused. He's going to introduce you. The conference room was already full when Eliza arrived at 10:58 a.m. 20 people, just like Caroline had said. All of them polished, sharp, expensive. The kind of people who'd been groomed for this kind of work since they were in prep school. Eliza slipped into a seat near the back, trying to make herself invisible. It didn't work. Heads turned. Eyes tracked her. Whispers rippled through the room. And then Landon walked in, followed by a man Eliza recognized immediately. Gavin Cross. Late 30s, maybe? Tall, with the kind of athletic build that suggested he spent his mornings in a gym that cost more than most people's cars. Dark suit, sharp jaw, eyes that swept the room like he was assessing threats. His gaze landed on Eliza and stopped. Landon stood at the head of the table, commanding the room without effort. Morning. I'll keep this brief. We've got a new addition to the senior team. He gestured toward Eliza. Eliza Bennett. She'll be working directly with me on strategic acquisitions. Some of you may have heard about the Weston deal last week. Eliza's the reason we didn't walk into a $300 million mistake. A few murmurs, a few skeptical glances. Gavin's expression didn't change. Eliza comes from a consulting background, Landon continued. She's got a sharp eye for risk assessment and structural flaws. I expect you all to extend her the same level of collaboration and respect you'd give anyone else on this team. Translation. Don't screw with her. Landon's eyes swept the room. Questions? Silence. Then Gavin spoke. Just one. His voice was smooth, controlled. Eliza, you mentioned consulting background. Which firm? Eliza's heart kicked. Sterling and Hale. Gavin nodded slowly. And you left because... Gavin! Landon's voice cut through the room like a blade. If you have concerns about Eliza's qualifications, you can discuss them with me, privately. Gavin smiled, didn't reach his eyes. Just trying to get to know the new hire. Landon didn't smile back. Meeting's over. Eliza, my office. 5 minutes. He walked out. Gavin watched her as she stood, his expression unreadable. Then he leaned in, just slightly, as she passed. Welcome to Pierce Capital, he said quietly. Hope you last longer than the last consultant Landon brought in. Eliza's hands were shaking again by the time she reached Landon's office. He was standing by the windows, staring out at the city, his posture rigid. I'm sorry about that, he said without turning around. It's fine. It's not. He turned to face her. Gavin was out of line. He was testing me. He was being an asshole. Eliza almost laughed. Almost. He's your second in command. He's allowed to be protective. Not like that. Landon crossed his arms. Gavin's brilliant. He's been with me since the first deal, but he's got a habit of treating new people like competition instead of teammates. Maybe I am competition. Landon's eyes narrowed. You're not here to compete with Gavin. You're here to do work no one else on this team can do. Eliza wanted to believe that, but she'd heard versions of that promise before. Landon, if this is going to work, I need to know something. What? Why did you really hire me? He didn't answer right away. Then he walked over to his desk, picked up a framed photo, and handed it to her. It was the same candid shot she'd seen online. Landon crouched on a sidewalk, smiling at a little girl with dark curls and bright eyes. Sophie, he said, she's 6, and she's the reason I do any of this. Eliza looked down at the photo, then back at Landon. I don't understand. Her mother left when Sophie was 2, just walked out. No explanation, no custody fight, just gone. His voice was steady, but there was something raw underneath. I've spent the last 4 years building a life where Sophie has everything she needs. Stability, security, a future. He took the photo back. But I've also spent those 4 years surrounded by people who tell me what I want to hear. People who are too afraid to challenge me. People who miss things because they're more worried about keeping their jobs than doing them right. He set the photo down. You didn't care about any of that. You saw a problem, and you spoke up, even though it cost you something. Eliza's throat tightened. I hired you because I need people who see the truth, Landon said, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's dangerous. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eliza nodded. Okay. I'll do the work. But if this goes sideways, if your fiancé decides I'm a threat, or if Gavin makes this impossible, I'm out. Fair. And if you ever lie to me, I'm out. Landon's eyes didn't waver. Deal. Eliza spent the rest of the day buried in the Arcadia Tech acquisition files. The numbers were a mess. Revenue projections that didn't match historical performance. Customer retention metrics that looked artificially inflated. Expense reports that had gaps big enough to drive a truck through. But underneath all the red flags, there was something else. Something the rest of the team had missed. By 4:47 p.m., she had it. She pulled together a 6-page analysis, attached the supporting documents, and sent it to Landon with the subject line. You're right, there's value here. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. My office, now. She found him standing behind his desk, her report pulled up on his monitor, his expression unreadable. Talk me through it, he said. Eliza stepped closer, pointing to the screen. Everyone's focused on the revenue inconsistencies, which makes sense. They look bad. But if you dig into the customer data, you'll see that 90% of their churn is coming from one product line, a legacy platform they launched 5 years ago that's hemorrhaging users. Okay, but their new platform, launched 18 months ago, has a 94% retention rate and year-over-year growth of 38%. The problem isn't the company. It's the way they're reporting their data. They're blending old product metrics with new product metrics, which makes everything look worse than it is. Landon leaned back in his chair, eyes locked on hers. So if we acquire them and kill the legacy platform, You're left with a company that's worth 3 times what they're asking. Silence. Then Landon smiled. You just saved us from walking away from a $2 billion opportunity. Eliza's heart was pounding now. The good kind of pounding. I'll need to verify the customer data with their internal teams, and we'll want legal to scrub the contracts for hidden liabilities. But yeah, this deal's good. Landon stood extending his hand. Welcome to the team, Eliza. She shook his hand, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like herself again. Eliza didn't see Victoria until Wednesday. She was in the break room on the 32nd floor, making coffee that tasted like it cost more per cup than her old rent, when the door opened and Victoria Harlow walked in. She looked the same as she had at the restaurant, effortlessly perfect. Blonde hair swept into a low ponytail, a cream-colored dress that probably had a French name, heels that made no sound on the polished floor. Eliza. It wasn't a greeting, it was an acknowledgement. Eliza turned, coffee cup in hand. Victoria. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Victoria stepped closer, her expression calm, controlled. I wanted to introduce myself properly. We didn't get a chance the other night. No, we didn't. Victoria smiled. It didn't touch her eyes. Landon told me he hired you. Congratulations. Thank you. He speaks very highly of you. That's nice to hear. Victoria tilted her head slightly, studying Eliza the way someone might study a piece of art they didn't particularly like. You know, it's interesting. Landon doesn't usually make hiring decisions this quickly, especially not for senior-level positions. Eliza kept her voice even. I think he saw an opportunity. I'm sure he did. The words hung in the air, sharp and precise. Eliza set her coffee cup down. Victoria, if you have something to say, just say it. Victoria's smile widened, just a fraction. I did some research on you. Sterling and Hale, the scandal, your ex-fiancé. It must have been devastating. Eliza's chest tightened. It was. And now here you are, back in the world that destroyed you, working for a man you barely know. Victoria's voice was soft, almost kind. I just hope you're prepared for what happens when people start asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that come up when a waitress suddenly becomes a senior consultant at one of the most powerful firms in the city. Victoria picked up a bottle of sparkling water from the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. People talk, Eliza, especially in this industry. And when they start talking about you and Landon, I want to make sure you know exactly where you stand. Eliza's pulse was racing now, but she kept her voice steady. And where's that? Victoria stepped closer, close enough that Eliza could smell her perfume. Expensive, floral, suffocating. You work for him. I'm marrying him. Those are very different things. She walked toward the door, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder. Oh, and Eliza? If you ever embarrass him, or me, the way you did at that dinner, I'll make sure everyone in this city knows exactly who you are, and what you did. The door closed behind her. Eliza stood there, alone in the break room, her hands gripping the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. She'd been threatened before, but never quite like that. That night, Eliza stayed late at the office, working through acquisition files until her eyes burned and the city outside had gone dark. She didn't want to go home, didn't want to sit alone in her apartment and replay Victoria's words over and over in her head. She was about to pack up when Landon appeared in her doorway. You're still here. Eliza looked up, startled. I could say the same about you. He stepped inside, leaning against the doorframe. I saw the updated analysis on Arcadia. It's good work. Thanks. You okay? Eliza hesitated. Why wouldn't I be? Landon's eyes narrowed. Because I know Victoria came by earlier. Caroline told me. Of course she did. Eliza closed her laptop. She introduced herself, that's all. Eliza. It's fine, Landon. It's not fine if she said something that made you uncomfortable. Eliza stood, grabbing her bag. She told me to stay in my lane, which honestly is fair. I'm the new hire, she's your fiancé. I get it. Landon didn't move. What else did she say? Nothing that matters. Eliza's Landon, I don't need you to fight my battles. Her voice came out sharper than she intended. I've been handling people like Victoria my entire career. I can handle this. He watched her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Eliza walked past him toward the elevator, her heart still racing. But just before the doors closed, she heard him call out, Eliza. She turned. For what it's worth, Landon said, his voice quieter now. You don't have a lane, you have a job, and you're damn good at it. The elevator doors slid shut, and Eliza stood there in the descending box, staring at her reflection in the polished steel, wondering how long it would take before everything fell apart again. By Friday, Eliza had settled into a rhythm. Early mornings, long days, late nights. The kind of schedule that didn't leave room for thinking too hard about anything outside the work. She liked it that way. Gavin still watched her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve, but he hadn't said anything directly, just hovered, asked pointed questions in meetings, made sure everyone knew he was Landon's right hand. Eliza didn't care. She had 3 active acquisition files on her desk, a meeting with the legal team in an hour, and a stack of financial models that needed review before Monday. She was good at this. Better than good. And for the first time in years, she wasn't invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Landon. Dinner tonight. 7 p.m. Aurelio's. Bring the Arcadia files. Eliza stared at the message. Aurelio's. The restaurant where this had all started. She typed back. Why there? 3 dots appeared. Then, because I want to see if you're still brave enough to walk in the front door. Eliza smiled. Just a little. I'll be there. Walking through the front door of Aurelio's felt different this time. Eliza wasn't carrying a tray. Wasn't wearing the black uniform that made her part of the furniture. She was in a navy dress she'd bought that afternoon. Nothing extravagant, but professional enough that the hostess didn't look at her like she'd wandered in off the street. Reservation for Pierce, Eliza said. The hostess's expression shifted immediately. Of course, right this way. They walked past the main dining room, past the bar where Eliza used to stand during slow shifts, past the kitchen doors she'd pushed through 1,000 times, up the stairs to the 3rd floor. The private dining room. Landon was already there, sitting at the same table where he'd offered $10 million to a room full of men who thought they knew everything. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. You came through the front door. You told me to. I wasn't sure you would. Eliza set the Arcadia files on the table and sat down across from him. Why wouldn't I? Because the last time you were here, you were invisible, and now you're not. He poured her a glass of wine from the bottle already open on the table. That's harder than people think. She took the glass but didn't drink. Is Victoria joining us? No. Does she know we're having dinner? Landon's jaw tightened slightly. She knows I have a business dinner. She doesn't need to know every detail. Eliza set the glass down. Landon, if this is going to be a problem, it's not. She cornered me in the break room on Wednesday, told me to stay in my lane. I know. You know? Caroline told me. He leaned back in his chair. I talked to Victoria about it. And? And she apologized. Eliza laughed, sharp, disbelieving. No, she didn't. Landon's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Okay. She said she'd be more professional. That's not the same thing. No, it's not. He picked up his own glass, swirling the wine without drinking. Victoria and I have an arrangement. It works for both of us, but she doesn't get to dictate who I hire or how I run my company. Eliza wanted to ask what kind of arrangement required that much clarification, but it wasn't her business. Fine. Let's talk about Arcadia. They spent the next hour going through the files, line by line, Landon asking sharp questions and Eliza answering faster than he could finish them. It felt easy. Natural. Like slipping back into a language she'd forgotten she was fluent in. By the time their food arrived, something expensive that Eliza didn't taste because she was too focused on the acquisition model pulled up on Landon's tablet. She'd almost forgotten where they were. Then Landon's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed. What is it? Sophie's nanny. She's sick. Needs to leave early. Eliza checked her watch. It's almost 8:30. I know. Landon was already standing, pulling out his wallet. I need to get home. Go. I'll finish up here. He hesitated. You sure? Landon, I used to work here. I think I can handle closing out a check. He left cash on the table, way too much, and grabbed his coat. I'll see you Monday. Tell Sophie I said hi. Landon paused, halfway to the door. You've never met Sophie. I know, but you talk about her enough that I feel like I have. Something shifted in his expression, softer, more open. Maybe you should. Then he was gone. Eliza sat there alone in the private dining room, surrounded by half-finished wine and acquisition files, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. On Monday morning, Gavin was waiting outside Eliza's office when she arrived. He was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, looking like he'd been there a while. Morning, Eliza said carefully. We need to talk. About? Arcadia. Eliza unlocked her office door and stepped inside. Gavin followed without waiting for an invitation. Landon signed off on your analysis, he said. We're moving forward with the acquisition. That's good. Is it? Eliza set her bag down and turned to face him. You have a problem with the deal? I have a problem with the process. Gavin's voice was calm, controlled, but there was an edge underneath. You've been here 2 weeks, Eliza. 2 weeks. And you're already making calls on billion-dollar acquisitions without running them through the rest of the team. Landon asked for my analysis. I gave it to him. Landon asked for a lot of things. That doesn't mean you bypass the people who've been doing this work for years. Eliza crossed her arms. Are you saying my analysis was wrong? I'm saying you don't know how things work here yet. Then explain it to me. Gavin stepped closer, his eyes hard. Pierce Capital isn't just Landon. It's a team, and teams don't function when one person decides they're smarter than everyone else. I never said I was smarter than anyone. You didn't have to. He turned toward the door, then paused. You want to last here? Stop acting like you're the only person in the room who can see the obvious. He left. Eliza stood there, her hands clenched into fists, her heart pounding. She wanted to go after him, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't trying to show anyone up, that she was just doing the job Landon had hired her to do. But maybe Gavin had a point. Maybe she'd been so focused on proving she belonged that she'd forgotten how to work with people who didn't trust her yet. She sat down at her desk and pulled up the team directory. Then she started drafting emails. He did. By Wednesday, Eliza had met with every senior team member individually. It was exhausting. Half of them were polite but distant. A quarter were openly skeptical. And the rest just seemed confused about why she was there at all. But she did it anyway. Because Gavin was right. She didn't know how things worked here yet. And if she was going to survive, she needed allies. She was finishing up notes from her last meeting when Landon appeared in her doorway. Busy? Always. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I heard you've been meeting with the team. Gavin suggested it. Landon's eyebrows lifted. Gavin suggested you build relationships? Not in those words, but yeah. He sat down across from her, looking almost amused. How's it going? Mixed results. Half of them think I'm here because you're sleeping with me. The other half think I'm a corporate spy. And the truth? The truth is, I'm just trying to do my job without making more enemies. Landon leaned back, studying her. You're good at this, you know. At what? Damage control? At reading people. At adapting. He paused. Most people in your position would have told Gavin to go to hell. I thought about it. But you didn't. No. Eliza closed her laptop. Because he wasn't wrong. I was moving too fast, acting like I had something to prove. You do have something to prove. Not like that. Landon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm having dinner with Sophie on Friday. At my place. I want you to come. Eliza's stomach flipped. Landon, it's not what you think. Sophie's been asking about work, about the people I work with. I think it would be good for her to meet you. Why me? Because you're the only person at this company who talks to me like I'm human. Eliza didn't know what to say to that. Victoria will be there too, Landon added. So it's not whatever you're thinking it is. Right, Victoria. Okay, Eliza said. What time? Landon's apartment was in Tribeca, on the top floor of a building that probably had a waiting list longer than Eliza's student loans. She stood outside the door at 6:58 p.m. on Friday, holding a bottle of wine she'd spent too much money on and wondering if this was the worst decision she'd made all week. Before she could knock, the door swung open. A little girl with dark curls and bright eyes stared up at her. Are you Eliza? Eliza's heart did something weird and fluttery. I am. You must be Sophie. Daddy said you're really smart. Your daddy's very nice, Sophie grinned. He also said you saved his company from a big mistake. I don't know about that. Sophie, let her inside before you interrogate her. Landon appeared behind his daughter, looking more relaxed than Eliza had ever seen him. Jeans, a sweater, no tie. It was unsettling. Eliza stepped inside and the door closed behind her. The apartment was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, furniture that managed to look expensive and comfortable at the same time, and toys scattered across the living room floor in a way that made the whole place feel lived in. Victoria's running late, Landon said, taking the wine. She'll be here in 20. Sophie grabbed Eliza's hand. Do you want to see my room? Eliza glanced at Landon. He shrugged. You're her guest. She gets to give the tour. Sophie dragged Eliza down a hallway lined with framed photos. Landon and Sophie at the beach, at a park, at what looked like a birthday party. No photos of Victoria. No photos of Sophie's mother. Sophie's room was exactly what Eliza expected. Books everywhere. A telescope by the window, drawings taped to the walls. I like space, Sophie announced, pointing at a poster of the solar system. And dinosaurs and math. That's a good combination. Daddy says you're good at math too. I'm okay at it. Sophie looked at her very seriously. Daddy doesn't say people are good at things unless they're really good at things. Eliza smiled. Then I guess I'm really good at it. They spent the next 15 minutes talking about planets and fossils and why school was sometimes boring, and by the time Landon called them for dinner, Eliza had almost forgotten to be nervous. Almost. Victoria arrived just as they were sitting down. She looked perfect, as always, hairstyled, makeup flawless, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Eliza, I didn't realize you'd be here. Landon handed Victoria a glass of wine. I mentioned it this morning. You said you were having a colleague over. You didn't say which one. The temperature in the room dropped about 10 degrees. Sophie, oblivious, started talking about her day at school, and the tension dissolved into polite conversation about teachers and homework and weekend plans. Eliza tried to fade into the background, tried to just be another guest at the table. But every time she looked up, Victoria was watching her. Halfway through dinner, Sophie turned to Eliza. Are you Daddy's friend? Eliza hesitated. I work with your dad. But are you friends? Landon set down his fork. Sophie, it's okay, Eliza said. She looked at Sophie. Yeah, I think we're friends. Sophie beamed. Good. Daddy needs more friends. Victoria's smile went sharp. Eliza, I've been meaning to ask, how are you adjusting to the corporate world? It must be such a change from waiting tables. Eliza's hands tightened around her fork. It's been an adjustment, but I'm managing. I'm sure you are. Though I imagine it's difficult, given your history. Landon's voice cut in, low and warning. Victoria. What? I'm just saying, coming back after that kind of scandal must be hard. People talk. People always talk, Eliza said evenly. I stopped listening a long time ago. Victoria tilted her head, still smiling. That's very wise. Though I wonder, does Landon know the whole story? About what really happened at Sterling and Hale? Eliza's chest tightened. Victoria, that's enough. Landon's voice was hard now. I'm just making conversation. No, you're not. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. Sophie, why don't you go pick out a movie for after dinner? Sophie looked between the adults, her eyes wide. Then she slipped out of her chair and disappeared down the hallway. The moment she was gone, Landon turned to Victoria. What the hell are you doing? I'm protecting you. From what? From making a mistake. Victoria stood, her voice rising. You bring her into your company. You invite her into our home. You let Sophie get attached to her. And you don't even know who she really is. I know exactly who she is. Do you? Victoria's eyes flicked to Eliza. Did she tell you that her fiancé didn't just commit fraud? That she was complicit? That the only reason she didn't go to prison was because she cut a deal with the feds? Eliza's stomach dropped. That's not true, she said, but her voice came out too quiet. Isn't it? Victoria pulled out her phone, swiping through screens. I have the court documents. Sealed but not that hard to find if you know where to look. She turned the phone toward Landon. Eliza couldn't see the screen, but she could see Landon's expression change. Landon, Eliza started. Is this true? His voice was quiet, controlled. No, I mean, yes, there were documents, but it's not what she's saying. I didn't cut a deal. I testified. There's a difference. You testified against your fiancé to save yourself, Victoria said. And now you're here, working for one of the most powerful men in the city. It's a pattern, Eliza. Eliza stood, her hands shaking. I testified because he committed fraud. Because he used our company to steal millions of dollars from people who trusted us. I didn't save myself. I did the right thing. And it just happened to keep you out of prison. Victoria, stop. Landon's voice was sharp enough to cut, but the damage was done. Eliza grabbed her bag. I should go. Eliza, no, she's right. I shouldn't be here. She looked at Landon, and her chest ached. I'm sorry. She walked out before he could stop her. Bucky. Eliza didn't go home. She walked, block after block, her heels clicking against the pavement, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts. She'd been stupid to think this could work, stupid to think she could walk back into this world and not have her past dragged up and weaponized. Stupid to think Landon would believe her over Victoria. Her phone rang. Landon. She didn't answer. It rang again. And again. On the fourth call, she picked up. What? Where are you? Walking. Liza, come back. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. His voice was firm. Victoria was out of line. And I don't care about sealed court documents or what she thinks she knows. I care about what you have to say. Eliza stopped walking. Landon, tell me the truth. All of it. She closed her eyes. Then she told him. She told him about Daniel, about the fraud, about how she'd found the discrepancies and reported them internally only to have Daniel turn the entire investigation around on her, about how the feds had offered her immunity in exchange for testimony, and how she'd spent 6 months cooperating with an investigation that destroyed her career, her reputation, and her ability to trust anyone. About how she'd said yes, not because she wanted to save herself, but because she couldn't let him get away with it. When she finished, there was silence on the other end of the line. Then Landon said, Where are you? I'm coming to get you. You don't have to... Eliza, where are you? She gave him the intersection. 20 minutes later, a black car pulled up to the curb, and Landon stepped out. He didn't say anything, just walked over to her, handed her his coat because she was shivering, and opened the car door. They drove back to his apartment in silence. When they got inside, Sophie was asleep on the couch, and Victoria was gone. Landon poured them both a drink and sat down across from Eliza. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not shutting that down sooner, for letting her ambush you. Eliza took a sip of whiskey. It burned. She's not wrong, you know. About the optics, about how this looks. I don't care how it looks. You should. Why? Because I'm a liability, Landon. I always have been. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. You're not a liability. You're the best hire I've made in 5 years. Eliza wanted to believe him, but believing people had cost her too much before. What happens now? She asked. Landon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Now you go back to work. You do your job, and you let me handle Victoria. And if she doesn't stop, she will. Eliza set her glass down. You sound very sure of that. I am. He paused. Victoria and I have an understanding. She gets the life she wants. I get the stability Sophie needs. But she doesn't get to destroy people I trust. Is that what I am? Someone you trust? Landon didn't hesitate. Yes. By the following Thursday, Eliza had almost convinced herself things were going back to normal. She was buried in a new acquisition file, a logistics company with messy financials and a CEO who kept dodging their calls, when Gavin appeared in her doorway. Again. "We need to talk." Eliza didn't look up. "Is this becoming a habit?" "I'm serious." Something in his voice made her stop. She looked up. Gavin's expression was tight, worried. "What's wrong?" He stepped inside and closed the door. "I think there's a problem with the Weston deal." Eliza's stomach dropped. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves money disappearing." He pulled up a spreadsheet on his tablet and slid it across her desk. Eliza scanned the numbers, her heart sinking. "This doesn't make sense. The integration budget was locked in months ago." "I know, but look at the disbursements." She did. And there it was. Payments going out to vendors that didn't exist, shell companies with addresses that trace back to P.O. boxes, transfers that had been authorized but never properly documented. "How much?" Eliza asked. $12 million. Maybe more." "Does Landon know?" "Not yet. I wanted to verify it first." Gavin's jaw tightened. "Eliza, if this is what I think it is, someone's been skimming. For months. Maybe longer." Eliza's hands went cold. "Who has access to these accounts?" "Senior team. Legal. Finance." Gavin paused. "And me." Eliza looked at him sharply. "You?" "I run operations. I sign off on disbursements." His voice was steady, but there was something raw underneath. "Which means, when this comes out, I'm going to be the first person they look at. Then we need to figure out who's actually doing this before it gets that far." Gavin met her eyes. "We need to tell Landon. Tonight." They found Landon in his office at 7:30, going through emails with the kind of focus that suggested he'd been there for hours. He looked up when they walked in. "This is either very good news or very bad news." "Bad," Gavin said. Landon's expression shifted. "How bad?" Eliza set the tablet on his desk. "Someone's been embezzling from the Weston acquisition. 12 million so far, possibly more." Landon went very still. Then he picked up the tablet and started scrolling. The silence stretched. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerous. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months," Gavin said. "Maybe longer. We're still tracing the payments. Who knows about this?" "Just us." Landon set the tablet down. "Keep it that way. If this leaks before we know who's responsible, they'll bury the evidence and disappear." "We need to bring in forensic accounting," Eliza said, "and legal. This is too big to handle internally." "Agreed, but quietly." Landon looked at Gavin. "I want a full audit of every transaction tied to this acquisition. Go back a year. I don't care how long it takes." Gavin nodded. Landon turned to Eliza. "I need you to cross-reference every vendor payment against our contractor database. If there are shell companies, I want to know who set them up." "On it." They worked through the night. By 3 a.m., Eliza's eyes were burning, and her third cup of coffee had gone cold. But they had something. A pattern. Every fraudulent payment had been authorized by the same person. Eliza stared at the name on the screen, her stomach turning. "No." Gavin looked over her shoulder. His face went white. Landon crossed the room. "What is it?" Eliza turned the screen toward him. The name staring back at them was Gavin Cross. Gavin stared at the screen like it had just accused him of murder. "That's not possible." Landon didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, his eyes locked on the name that kept appearing next to every fraudulent transaction. "Landon, I didn't do this." Gavin's voice was rising now, panic bleeding through the control. "You know me. I've been with you since the beginning. I would never—" "Then explain it." Landon's voice was flat, empty. "I can't. I don't know how my credentials are on these approvals. I never authorized any of this." Eliza's mind was racing. She pulled up the authorization log, scanning timestamps, IP addresses, access points. "These approvals were made from your login," she said quietly, "but the IP addresses are all over the place, some from the office, some from locations that don't match your travel records." "So someone's using my credentials," Gavin said, his hands braced on the desk. "Someone's been impersonating me." "Or you set this up to look that way," Landon said. The room went silent. Gavin's face drained of color. "You think I did this?" I think the evidence says you did. The evidence is wrong. Then prove it. Gavin stepped back like he'd been slapped. Landon, we've known each other for 8 years. I helped you build this company. I was there when Sophie was born, when her mother left. I've been loyal to you through everything, and you're going to stand there and accuse me of stealing from you? Landon's expression didn't change. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm looking at data. Screw the data. Look at me. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Landon said, I need you to step away from all active deals until we sort this out. You're suspending me. I'm protecting the company. Gavin's jaw clenched. And what about protecting me? Your second in command? Your friend? If you didn't do this, the investigation will prove it. And if it doesn't? If someone set me up and you're too blind to see it? Gavin's voice cracked. You're throwing me to the wolves, Landon. I'm doing my job. Gavin looked at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the frame. Eliza let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Landon stood motionless, staring at the closed door. You don't actually think he did this, Eliza said. I don't know what I think. His voice was rough, tired. But I can't ignore the evidence. The evidence could be manufactured. By who? I don't know yet. Eliza pulled the laptop closer. But if someone wanted to frame Gavin, this is exactly how they'd do it. Use his credentials. Make it look like he's been skimming for months. Wait for someone to find it. Landon finally looked at her. You think this is a setup. I think $12 million doesn't disappear without someone noticing. And I think Gavin brought this to us. If he was guilty, why would he do that? To get ahead of it, to control the narrative. Or because he's innocent and he's terrified. Eliza stood. We need to dig deeper. Check who else had access to his login credentials. See if there's a pattern we're missing. Landon rubbed his eyes. He looked exhausted. Older than 32. If Gavin's being framed, that means someone inside this company is smart enough to pull this off without getting caught. And ruthless enough to destroy him in the process. Landon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then swore under his breath. What? Victoria. She's at the apartment. Wants to know why I'm still at the office at 3 a.m. Eliza picked up her bag. Go home. I'll keep working on this. Eliza. I'm not leaving until I find something. She met his eyes. If Gavin's innocent, we need to prove it before this gets out. And if he's not, she paused. Then we need to know that too. Landon nodded slowly. Be careful. Always. He left, and Eliza sat back down at the desk, pulled up the transaction logs, and started digging. By the time the sun came up, Eliza had gone through 6 months of financial records, 3 databases, and enough coffee to kill a small horse. She'd found something. Not proof, not yet, but a thread. Every fraudulent payment had been routed through a third-party payment processor that Pierce Capital used for contractor disbursements. Standard practice. Nothing unusual. Except, the processor's security log showed that Gavin's credentials had been accessed remotely, multiple times, from IP addresses that didn't match any of his known devices. Someone had cloned his login. Eliza pulled up the security footage from the office, cross-referencing timestamps with the fraudulent transactions. And there it was, 3 weeks ago, 11:47 p.m. Someone had entered the building using an executive access card, gone straight to Gavin's office, and spent 23 minutes inside. The footage was grainy, but the figure was clear enough. Tall, male, moving with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly where the cameras were. Eliza zoomed in on the access log. The card used to enter the building belonged to Gavin. But Gavin had been in London that night. She'd seen the travel itinerary herself, which meant someone else had used his card. She pulled up the personnel files, cross-referencing everyone who'd been in the building that night. Only 3 people. Night security, a junior analyst working late, and Eliza's stomach dropped. Marcus Chen, Senior VP of Finance. She grabbed her phone and called Landon. He picked up on the second ring. Tell me you found something. I found something. We need to meet now. I'm at home. Sophie's still asleep. Can it wait until... No, it can't. Silence. Then Landon said, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Eon. Landon walked into the office looking like he'd slept in his clothes, which Eliza realized he probably had. Show me. Eliza pulled up the footage, the access logs, the timeline. Landon watched in silence, his expression darkening with every second. Marcus. He was in Gavin's office the night before the first fraudulent transaction, and he has the technical access to clone credentials and reroute payments. Why would he do this? I don't know yet, but we need to confront him before he realizes we're on to him. Landon pulled out his phone. I'm calling him in. Wait. Eliza grabbed his wrist. If we tip him off, he'll destroy the evidence. We need to be smarter than that. Then what do you suggest? Eliza thought fast. We set a trap. Tell him we've identified another discrepancy in the Weston deal, and we need his help reconciling it. Get him in a room. See how he reacts. Landon stared at her. You want to bluff. I want to see if he panics. And if he doesn't, then we keep digging. But if he does... She met his eyes. Then we'll know. Landon was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Set it up. Marcus Chen arrived at the office at 9:30 looking polished and unbothered. He was in his early 40s with the kind of calm competence that made him easy to trust. Eliza had met him twice. Both times he'd been professional, helpful, forgettable. Now, watching him walk into the conference room with a coffee in one hand and his tablet in the other, she wondered how she'd missed it. Morning, Marcus said, sitting down across from Landon and Eliza. Caroline said this was urgent? It is. Landon slid a folder across the table. We found another issue with the Weston disbursements. Payments that don't match our records. Marcus opened the folder, scanning the documents with the practiced eye of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. How much are we talking? Enough to be a problem. Marcus frowned. This doesn't make sense. These accounts were reconciled last month. Were they? Eliza leaned forward. Because the audit trail says otherwise. Marcus looked at her, his expression shifting, just slightly. What audit trail? The one that shows multiple payments being authorized outside of normal protocols. By who? That's what we're trying to figure out. Marcus set the folder down. If there's a discrepancy, I can pull the full transaction history. See where the breakdown is. We'd appreciate that, Landon said. Marcus stood. I'll have it to you by end of day. Actually, Eliza said, her voice casual, we were hoping you could walk us through it now, just so we're all on the same page. Marcus hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. I don't have access to the full database from here. I'd need to go back to my office. We can wait. Marcus's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. This really can't wait until this afternoon? No, Landon said. It can't. The room went quiet. Marcus looked between them, his expression carefully neutral. Then he sat back down. What's this really about? Landon didn't answer. Eliza pulled up the security footage on her laptop and turned the screen toward him. That's you, in Gavin's office, 3 weeks ago, at 11:47 p.m. Marcus stared at the screen. I was working late. I needed to grab a file from Gavin's office. He gave me permission. Gavin was in London that night. He gave me permission before he left. Then why did you use his access card to get into the building? Eliza asked. And why did you spend 23 minutes in his office when you could have grabbed a file in 2? Marcus's jaw tightened. I think I should call my lawyer. Landon leaned forward. You can call whoever you want, but before you do, I want you to know that we've already traced $12 million in fraudulent payments back to accounts you set up. We have the transaction logs, the IP addresses, the authorization trail. That's Gavin's authorization trail, not mine. Gavin's credentials, Eliza corrected, which you cloned. Marcus stood abruptly. I'm not doing this without legal counsel. Sit down, Landon said, his voice hard. No. Landon stood too, and the temperature in the room dropped. You've been stealing from this company for months, using Gavin's credentials to cover your tracks. And when we started getting close, you tried to pin it on him. You can't prove any of that. Actually, Eliza said, pulling up another file, we can. You made a mistake 3 weeks ago. You used your personal laptop to access the payment processor, and your IP address is all over the logs. Marcus's face went pale. You're bluffing. Eliza turned the laptop toward him. He looked at the screen, and his expression crumbled. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Marcus sank back into his chair, his hands shaking. I needed the money. Landon's voice was ice. You stole $12 million because you needed the money? My wife. Marcus's voice broke. She's sick, stage 4 cancer. The treatments aren't covered by insurance. I couldn't. He pressed his palms to his eyes. I couldn't let her die. Eliza's chest tightened. Landon didn't move. So you decided to destroy Gavin instead. I didn't want to. But when you started the audit, I panicked. I thought if I could make it look like someone else. He stopped. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. I know. Marcus looked up, his eyes red. I know. I'll pay it back, all of it. Just, please, don't press charges. My wife needs me. Landon's expression was unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone. Security, I need you to escort Marcus Chen out of the building. He's no longer employed here. Marcus's face went white. Landon, and call the police. Tell them we have evidence of embezzlement and fraud. Landon, please, you made your choice, Marcus. Now you live with it. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Marcus didn't fight. He just stood, his shoulders slumped, and let them lead him out. When the door closed, Landon sank into his chair and buried his face in his hands. Eliza didn't know what to say, so she just sat there, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. After a long moment, Landon looked up. I need to call Gavin. Gavin answered on the first ring. Tell me you found something. We did. Landon's voice was rough. It was Marcus. Silence. Then Gavin said, Marcus Chen, from finance? Yeah. Why? His wife's sick. He needed money for treatment. Gavin swore under his breath. And he set me up. Yeah. Another silence. Landon, I need you to know I would never... I know. Landon's voice cracked, just slightly. I'm sorry I doubted you. You were protecting the company. I should have protected you too. Gavin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Am I still suspended? No. Come back in. We'll figure out the rest together. Okay? Landon hung up and set his phone on the table. Eliza watched him carefully. You okay? No. He looked at her. I just arrested one of my senior team members and almost destroyed my oldest friendship. I'm not okay. You did the right thing. Did I? Marcus's wife is dying, Eliza. And I just sent him to jail. He stole $12 million to save her life. Eliza didn't have an answer for that. Landon stood, walking to the window, staring out at the city. When I started this company, I thought the hardest part would be the deals, the negotiations, the competition. He shook his head. But it's not. It's this. The choices that don't have right answers. Eliza stood and walked over to him. You gave him a chance. He made the wrong choice. That's not on you. Feels like it is. They stood there in silence for a long moment. Then Eliza's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You're good, but not good enough. Check your personal accounts. Her blood went cold. Landon? What? She showed him the text. He frowned. Who sent that? I don't know. Eliza pulled up her banking app with shaking hands and froze. Her savings account, the one she'd barely touched in 3 years, had a new deposit. $50,000, dated 2 weeks ago. What the hell? Another text came through. You helped yourself to the company funds too. Didn't think we'd notice? Better get your story straight before HR finds out. Eliza's hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. This isn't real. I didn't... Landon took the phone from her, reading the messages, his expression darkening. Someone's setting you up, just like they set up Gavin. But why? I don't know. Another text. Resign. Today. Or everyone finds out what you really are. Eliza felt sick. Landon grabbed his phone. I'm calling security. We're locking down every system, finding out who sent this. It won't matter. Eliza's voice was hollow. The money's in my account. The evidence is there, just like it was for Gavin. We'll prove it's fake, will we? Because Marcus almost got away with it. Gavin almost went down for something he didn't do. And now someone's doing the same thing to me. Landon gripped her shoulders. I'm not letting that happen. You might not have a choice. Eliza... Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. Victoria. Eliza's stomach dropped. She answered. Hello? Eliza. Victoria's voice was calm, almost cheerful. I think we need to talk privately. About what? About the $50,000 that mysteriously appeared in your account, and how it's going to look when the board finds out. Eliza's hands went numb. You did this. Did what? I'm just concerned about the company's reputation. Landon's been through so much already. Finding out that his new hire has been embezzling funds? That would be devastating. I didn't take anything. Didn't you? The evidence says otherwise. Victoria paused. Meet me at Aurelio's. 1 hour. Come alone. Or I go to the board. The call ended. Eliza stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, her entire world tilting sideways again. Landon was staring at her. What did she say? She wants to meet at the restaurant. This is a setup. I know. Don't go. Eliza looked at him. If I don't, she goes to the board. And even if we prove the money's fake, the accusation alone will destroy me. Again. Then we prove it first. There's no time. Eliza grabbed her bag. I have to do this. Not alone, you don't. She said, come alone. I don't care what she said. Eliza put her hand on his chest. Landon, if you show up, she'll know you're helping me. And whatever she's planning, it'll get worse. I'm not letting you walk into a trap. I've walked into worse. She left before he could stop her. Aurelio's was quiet at 11 a.m. Too early for lunch, too late for breakfast. Just a few scattered tables, soft music, and the smell of bread baking somewhere in the back. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table, a glass of sparkling water in front of her. She looked up when Eliza approached, smiling like they were old friends. Eliza, thank you for coming. Eliza sat down. What do you want? Straight to the point. I like that. Victoria took a sip of water. I want you to resign. I didn't steal anything. I know. Eliza blinked. What? I know you didn't take the money. I put it there. The room tilted. Why? Victoria leaned forward, her voice soft, almost kind. Because you don't belong in Landon's world. You never did. And the longer you stay, the more damage you'll do. To who? Him or you? Both. Victoria's smile didn't waver. Landon's been through hell, Eliza. His ex-wife abandoned him. He's been raising Sophie alone, building a company, trying to hold everything together. And then you show up, broken, desperate, clinging to him like he's your last chance. That's not... It is, and I can't let that continue. Victoria's voice hardened. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign. You're going to take your severance and disappear. And in exchange, I'll make sure the money in your account disappears too. No questions, no investigation. And if I say no, then I go to the board. I show them the evidence. I tell them Landon hired you despite your history, and now you've betrayed him. Again. Victoria tilted her head. How do you think that ends for you? Eliza's hands were shaking under the table. Landon won't believe you. Won't he? He almost believed Marcus set up Gavin. He almost believed you testified to save yourself. Landon wants to trust people, Eliza. But he's been burned too many times. All I have to do is give him one more reason to doubt. Eliza stared at her. You're doing this because you're jealous. Victoria laughed. Jealous? Of you? Please. Then why? Victoria's expression shifted, colder, sharper. Because Sophie asked about you at breakfast yesterday. She wanted to know when you were coming over again. Her voice dropped. Landon doesn't let people into Sophie's life, ever. And the fact that he let you in means you're a threat. I'm not trying to take anything from you. You already have. Victoria stood. You have until end of business today. Resign, or I destroy you. She walked out, and Eliza sat there, alone in the restaurant where everything had started, wondering how the hell she was going to survive this. She didn't go back to the office. She went home, sat on her couch, stared at the wall. Her phone rang. Landon. She didn't answer. It rang again and again. Finally, she picked up. "I'm fine." "You're not." "What did she say?" Eliza closed her eyes. "She wants me to resign." "Absolutely not. She set me up, Landon. She put the money in my account. And if I don't leave, she's going to the board." "Let her. We'll prove it's fake." "How? The money's real. The transfer's real. All she has to do is say I took it, and people will believe her. They already think I'm here because of you." "I don't care what people think." "I do." Eliza's voice broke. "I can't go through this again, the investigation, the accusations, watching my name get dragged through the press while everyone assumes I'm guilty." Landon was quiet. Then he said, "Don't resign, please. Give me 24 hours. Let me fix this." "You can't fix this." "Yes, I can. Trust me." Eliza wanted to. She really did. But trust had cost her everything before. "I'll think about it," she said. And she hung up. She sat there in the dark, her phone in her lap, trying to figure out which mistake had led her here. Was it saying yes to the job? Was it speaking up at the dinner? Was it believing that someone like Landon Pierce could actually see her as more than a liability? Her phone buzzed. A text. From Victoria. "Tick-tock, Eliza." Eliza threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor. And she sat there, alone, wondering if she'd ever stop running from the past. Eliza spent the rest of the day staring at her laptop, drafting a resignation letter she couldn't bring herself to finish. 3 different versions, all of them cowardly, all of them true. By 6 p.m., her phone had 17 missed calls from Landon, 9 texts from Caroline asking if she was okay, and 1 more message from Victoria. "Time's up. I'm sending the evidence to the board in 1 hour." Eliza's hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. She pulled up the resignation letter 1 more time, her cursor blinking at the end of the final paragraph. 1 click. That's all it would take. 1 click, and she could disappear again. Go back to being invisible. Go back to waiting tables and pretending the last month hadn't happened. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. Then someone knocked on her door. Eliza froze. Another knock. Harder this time. She walked over and looked through the peephole. Landon. Her chest tightened. "I know you're in there," he called through the door. "Open up." "Go away." "Not a chance." "Landon." "Eliza, either you open this door, or I'm calling your landlord and telling him it's an emergency." She closed her eyes, her forehead pressed against the door. Then she opened it. Landon stood in the hallway, still in his work clothes, his tie loosened, his hair messier than she'd ever seen it. He looked like he'd run the entire way from Midtown. "You didn't resign," he said. "Not yet." "Good. Don't." He stepped inside without waiting for permission, his eyes scanning the apartment, the tiny kitchen, the thrift store furniture, the cracked plaster on the ceiling. "This is where you live?" "Not all of us have penthouses in Tribeca." He turned to face her. "I'm not judging, I'm just—" He stopped. "I didn't know it was this bad." "It's fine." "It's not fine. You're one of the best strategic minds I've ever worked with, and you're living in a place that doesn't even have heat." "The radiator works." "Mostly." Landon rubbed his face. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point? Because I'm about to lose my job, my reputation, and possibly my freedom if Victoria goes through with this. So unless you have a solution—" "I do." Eliza stopped. Landon pulled out his phone and held it up so she could see the screen. It was a recording, audio only. The timestamp read 11:07 a.m. that morning. "What is this?" "Press play." She did. Victoria's voice filled the apartment, clear and unmistakable. "I know you didn't take the money. I put it there." Eliza's breath caught. The recording continued. Every word, every threat, every admission. When it ended, Eliza looked up at Landon, her heart pounding. "How did you—" "I didn't trust her, so I had Caroline track your phone. When you went to Aurelio's, I followed you, sat 2 tables over, recorded everything." "You followed me." "Yeah. After I told you not to." Yeah. Eliza didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're an idiot. Probably. He pocketed the phone. But I'm an idiot with evidence, and I've already sent it to our legal team. Landon, if Victoria finds out, she already knows. I confronted her an hour ago. Eliza's stomach dropped. You what? I played her the recording, told her she had two choices. Walk away quietly, or I go to the board and the police with evidence of extortion, fraud, and harassment. What did she say? Landon's expression went hard. She said I was choosing you over her. And? I told her she was right. The air left Eliza's lungs. Landon stepped closer, his voice quieter now. Victoria and I were never in love, Eliza. We had an arrangement. She got the life she wanted. I got stability for Sophie. But the second she went after you, the second she tried to destroy someone I care about, that arrangement ended. You care about me. Yeah, I do. Eliza's throat tightened. Landon, I know this is complicated. I know you've been burned before, and I'm not asking you for anything except to trust me, just for a little while longer. She wanted to. She really did. But every instinct she had was screaming at her to run. What happens now? She asked. Now Victoria signs a separation agreement, returns the ring, and disappears. The board gets a sanitized version of events, and you come back to work. Just like that. Just like that. And if people ask questions, let them ask. I'll tell them the truth. You're here because you're brilliant, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me. Eliza looked at him, at this man who'd upended her life in the span of a month, who'd seen past the uniform and the fear and the scandal, who'd risked his engagement and his reputation to protect her. Why are you doing this? Landon's expression softened. Because 3 years ago, someone should have stood up for you, and no one did. I'm not making that mistake. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Eliza said, Okay. Okay? I'll come back, but I have conditions. Name them. No special treatment, no exceptions. I do the work, I prove myself, and if I screw up, I deal with the consequences. Done. And if this gets messy, if Victoria fights back, if the board pushes, if anything happens to Sophie because of me, I'm out. No arguments. Landon hesitated, then nodded. Fair. Eliza held out her hand. Deal? He took it. Deal. Bam out. Victoria was gone by the end of the week. No dramatic exit, no public statement, just a quiet dissolution of the engagement, a settlement agreement that kept both sides silent, and a moving truck that took her things from Landon's apartment on a Tuesday morning when Sophie was at school. The office buzzed with rumors for about 3 days. Then a new acquisition landed on everyone's desk, and Victoria Harlow became old news. Eliza kept her head down and did the work. She rebuilt the Arcadia analysis from scratch, closed 2 deals that had been stalled for months, presented a restructuring plan to the board that earned her a standing ovation and 3 job offers from competitors. She turned them all down. Gavin, to his credit, didn't hold a grudge. He started treating her like part of the team instead of a threat. They even grabbed lunch a few times, trading war stories about corporate politics and bad bosses. You know, Gavin said one afternoon, halfway through a sandwich that cost more than Eliza used to make in a day, I thought you were going to be a disaster. Thanks. I'm serious. I thought Landon hired you on impulse, and it was going to blow up in his face. He paused. I was wrong. You were protecting him. I get it. Yeah, but I was also being an ass. Gavin leaned back. You're good at this, Eliza. Really good. Don't let anyone tell you different. She smiled. I'll try. By the end of the second month, Eliza had moved into a better apartment. Nothing extravagant, but it had heat that worked and windows that actually closed. Caroline had helped her find it, claiming it was part of the relocation package. Eliza suspected Landon had something to do with it. She didn't ask. Sophie started asking when Eliza was coming over again. At first, Landon deflected. Then he stopped deflecting and just invited her. Dinner became a semi-regular thing. Once a week, sometimes twice. Eliza would show up with takeout or groceries. Sophie would drag her into whatever project she was working on. A science fair volcano, a book report on sharks, a Lego city that sprawled across the entire living room floor. And Landon would cook or order in, and they'd eat together like something close to a family. It scared Eliza how much she liked it. One night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Eliza and Landon sat on the couch with the city lights glittering outside the windows, and he asked the question she'd been avoiding. What happens next? What do you mean? With us. Eliza's heart did that stupid fluttery thing again. There is no us, Landon. Isn't there? She looked at him, at the way he was watching her like she was a puzzle he was still trying to solve. I work for you. So? So that complicates things. Not everything about this is complicated. He shifted closer. But I don't care. You should. Why? Because I'm a mess, Landon. I'm broke. I'm damaged. I've got a scandal in my past that's never going away. And you're... She gestured at the apartment, at him, at everything. You're you. And? And you deserve someone who's not constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. Landon was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know what I see when I look at you? Someone who's going to disappoint you eventually. No. His voice was firm. I see someone who got knocked down and got back up. Someone who saw a problem and spoke up even though it scared her. Someone who walked into a room full of people who didn't want her there and proved she belonged. He paused. I see someone brave, even if she doesn't see it herself. Eliza's throat tightened. I'm not brave. You are. You just don't know it yet. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that she could be the person he saw instead of the person she'd convinced herself she was. But believing was terrifying. I need time, she said quietly. Take all the time you need. Landon stood, offering her his hand. I'm not going anywhere. 3 months later, Eliza was standing in Landon's office going over the final numbers on the Arcadia acquisition when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, then she did. Eliza Bennett? Yes? This is Jennifer Hale from Sterling and Hale Consulting. Eliza's blood went cold. Jennifer Hale, one of the senior partners, one of the people who'd refused to return her calls 3 years ago when the scandal broke. What do you want? I wanted to reach out personally. We've been following your work at Pierce Capital, the Arcadia deal, the restructuring plan you presented last month. It's impressive. Eliza didn't say anything. We made a mistake, Eliza, 3 years ago. We should have stood by you, and I'm calling to see if you'd be interested in coming back. Coming back. As a senior partner, full equity, your own team. We're prepared to offer you a significant signing bonus and complete autonomy over your client portfolio. Eliza's heart was pounding. This was the call she'd waited 3 years for. The vindication. The proof that she'd been right all along. I'll think about it, she said. We'd need an answer by the end of the week. You'll have one. She hung up. Landon was watching her from across the desk. Who was that? Sterling and Hale. They want me back. His expression didn't change. What did you say? That I'd think about it. Silence. Then Landon nodded slowly. You should take it. Eliza blinked. What? If that's what you want, you should take it. It's a good offer. You don't even know what they offered. I know it's probably better than what I'm paying you, and I know it's the kind of opportunity you've been waiting for. Eliza set her phone down. You want me to leave? No, but I don't want you to stay because you feel like you owe me something. He leaned back in his chair. You don't, Eliza. You've earned everything you have here. And if Sterling and Hale is offering you the career you should have had 3 years ago, then you should take it. And if I don't want to, then don't. It's not that simple. It is, actually. He stood walking around the desk until he was standing in front of her. What do you want, Eliza? She looked at him. At the man who'd taken a chance on her when no one else would. Who'd stood up to Victoria. Who'd invited her into his daughter's life. Who'd looked at her like she was someone worth fighting for. I want to stop being afraid, she said quietly. Of what? Of losing this. Of screwing it up. Of waking up one day and realizing it was all too good to be true. Landon's expression softened. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He reached for her hand. Because you're not the same person who walked out of Sterling and Hale 3 years ago. You're stronger than that, smarter than that, and you don't need their validation anymore. Eliza's eyes stung. What if I fail? Then you fail, and you get back up, just like you did before. She looked down at their joined hands. Then she made her decision. What? Eliza called Jennifer Hale back the next morning. I appreciate the offer, she said, but I'm staying where I am. There was a pause. Are you sure? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Eliza. I know, but I'm already exactly where I want to be. She hung up, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt free. 6 months later, Landon brought Eliza back to Aurelio's. Not for work this time. Not for a crisis or a confrontation or a test. Just dinner. They sat at the same table where everything had started, and Landon ordered a bottle of wine that probably cost more than Eliza's first car. You know, Eliza said, looking around the room, the last time I was here, I was carrying trays and trying not to get fired. And now you're a full partner at Pierce Capital. Executive consultant. I'm working on the partner thing. He smiled. Give me a few more months. You're impossible. You like that about me. She did. She really did. Halfway through dinner, Sophie appeared in the doorway with Caroline, who was clearly trying not to laugh. Sophie insisted, Caroline said. She wanted to surprise you. Sophie ran over and threw her arms around Eliza's waist. Are you having a date? Eliza's face went hot. No, we're just… Yes, Landon said. Eliza looked at him. He looked back, completely unbothered. We're on a date, he confirmed. Sophie grinned. I knew it. Can I stay? Absolutely not, Caroline said, gently pulling her back. You have school tomorrow. Say goodnight. Sophie hugged them both, then disappeared down the hallway with Caroline. Eliza stared at Landon. You told her we were on a date. We are. You didn't ask me. I'm asking now. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Eliza Bennett, will you go on a date with me? We're already on a date. Then will you go on another one? She laughed. She couldn't help it. Yeah, okay. Good, he smiled. Because I have something for you. He pulled a small box from his pocket and set it on the table. Eliza's heart stopped. Landon, relax. It's not a ring. She opened the box. Inside was a key. What is this? A key to my place, so you don't have to knock anymore. He paused. Sophie's been asking when you're moving in. I figured I'd give you the option. Eliza stared at the key, her throat tight. You want me to move in? Only if you want to. No pressure. But yeah, I want you there. Sophie wants you there. And I think… He hesitated. I think you want to be there too. He wasn't wrong. Eliza picked up the key, turning it over in her hands. This is crazy. Probably. I've only been back in your life for 7 months. I know. People are going to talk. Let them. Eliza looked at him. At the man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth the risk. What if I mess this up? Then we'll figure it out together. She wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, but she didn't. Instead, she closed her hand around the key and said, Okay. Landon's smile could have lit up the entire city. 3 months after that, Eliza stood in Landon's apartment, their apartment now, watching Sophie build a blanket fort in the living room and realize something. She wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't the woman in the apron trying to disappear. She wasn't the consultant who'd been destroyed by scandal. She was just Eliza, flawed, scared sometimes, still figuring it out, but not alone. Landon walked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You okay? Yeah. She leaned back against him. I'm okay. Sophie popped her head out of the fort. Eliza, you have to come see this. I made a secret entrance. Eliza laughed. I'll be right there. She looked up at Landon. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For seeing me. Landon kissed the top of her head. Always. A year later, Eliza was standing in front of the Pierce Capital Board of Directors, presenting the quarterly earnings report, when Landon interrupted. Actually, before we move on, I have an announcement. The room went quiet. Landon stood. Effective immediately, Eliza Bennett is being promoted to senior partner and chief strategic officer. Eliza's jaw dropped. Gavin started clapping, then Caroline, then the rest of the room. Landon walked over to her, holding out a folder. "Congratulations, partner." Eliza took it, her hands shaking. Inside was a contract, equity, full voting rights, her name listed alongside Landon's and Gavin's at the top of the corporate structure. She looked up at him, her eyes stinging. "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. You've earned it." The board meeting continued, but Eliza barely heard any of it. She just sat there, holding the contract, realizing that she'd finally stopped running. That night, Landon took her and Sophie to Aurelio's one more time. They sat at table 7, the same table where Eliza had once been invisible, and Landon raised his glass. To new beginnings. Sophie raised her juice box. And to Eliza being a boss now. Eliza laughed, raising her own glass. "To family." Landon's eyes met hers. "To family," he echoed. They clinked glasses. And in that moment, surrounded by the ghosts of who she used to be and the promise of who she was becoming, Eliza finally understood what it felt like to be seen. Not as a scandal, not as a mistake, not as someone who needed saving, just as herself. And that was enough. 2 years later, on a quiet Sunday morning, Landon woke up to find Sophie shaking his shoulder. Dad, wake up." He blinked, squinting at the clock. "Sophie, it's 6 a.m. on a Sunday." "I know, but Eliza's making pancakes, and she said I could help." Landon smiled. "Then we better get down there before she burns the kitchen down." They found Eliza in the kitchen, flour on her face, batter splattered across the counter, and a stack of slightly lopsided pancakes already cooling on a plate. She looked up when they walked in, grinning. "Morning, hope you're hungry." Sophie climbed onto a stool. "Can I have chocolate chips in mine?" Already added them. Landon poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching the two of them work together. This was what he'd been building toward all along. Not the company, not the deals, not the money. This, a family. Eliza caught him staring and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing, just thinking." About how lucky I am." She walked over and kissed him. "We both are." Sophie made a gagging noise. "Gross, no kissing before breakfast." They laughed, and the morning stretched out ahead of them, full of pancakes and laughter and the kind of ordinary, imperfect happiness that Eliza had stopped believing in years ago. But here it was. Real, messy, hers, and she wasn't letting it go. On a cold evening in December, Landon asked Eliza to marry him. Not at a fancy restaurant, not in front of a crowd. Just the two of them, standing in the living room after Sophie had gone to bed, the city lights glittering outside the windows. He got down on one knee, holding a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, and asked her the simplest, most important question. "Will you marry me?" Eliza looked at him, at this man who'd seen past the uniform and the fear and the scandal, who'd given her a second chance when no one else would, who'd built a life with her that felt like home. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him to his feet and kissed him like her life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. They got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony with close friends and family. Sophie was the flower girl. Gavin was the best man. Caroline cried through the entire thing. And when Eliza walked down the aisle and saw Landon waiting for her at the altar, she realized something. She'd spent 3 years running from her past, but she'd found her future in the last place she'd expected. In a man who'd looked at her and seen potential instead of damage. In a little girl who had asked when she was moving in. In a company that had given her a second chance to prove who she really was. She wasn't the shy waitress anymore. She wasn't the woman who'd been destroyed by scandal. She was Eliza Pierce. Partner, strategist, wife, stepmother, and she was exactly where she belonged. When the officiant pronounced them married, Landon kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. Sophie cheered, the guests applauded, and Eliza felt, for the first time in her entire life, completely and utterly whole. Years later, when people asked how they met, Landon always told the same story. About a dinner, a challenge, A waitress who'd spoken up when everyone else stayed silent. About the moment he'd looked at her and known she was someone worth betting on. Eliza would roll her eyes and add her own version. About a billionaire who'd been too stubborn to listen to his own team. About the night she'd stopped being invisible. And Sophie, who'd heard the story 100 times, would always interrupt and say the same thing. And then Eliza moved in and made everything better. Which, in the end, was the truest version of all. Because Eliza Bennett had walked into Landon Pierce's life carrying a tray of champagne and a heart full of fear. And she'd walked out with a family, a career, and a love that had been worth every risk. She'd stopped running, she'd stopped hiding, she'd stopped being afraid, and she'd finally found the one thing she'd been searching for all along: home.